how are your finances looking in the age of coronavirus? Is your family one of the tens of thousands that is struggling right now? Who do you turn to when you're at the end of your rope?
This is Signs of the Times Radio with Kent Kingston.
Hey, it's great to have you with us on Signs of the Times Radio. I'm on the phone with Rosie Kendall. She is the CEO of Christians Against Poverty. She's based there in Newcastle. How are you, Rosie?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. I think I might have seen Dave Kendall speak. He's your partner, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, he's my husband. So, yeah, he also works for CAP and does quite a lot of speaking engagements as well. So, yeah, I'm the CEO of CAP, but I think Dave has been out there and more people know him than they do me. So I often get people say, I know Dave.
Yeah, sure. So you do all the hard work and he gets all the credit, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but we both work pretty hard, I think.
Yeah. Now, it's an interesting name for an organisation, Christians Against Poverty, and I guess a lot of people would say, "Well, I'm against poverty too." But so, what is it that your organisation does exactly? Just to give us a thumbnail sketch to start off with, and I guess we'll probably explore it in a little more depth, as we continue to chat.
Yeah, so as you say, I think most people would be against poverty. We have a picture of what poverty looks like. Most of us probably, when presented with the word poverty and people in poverty, we probably think of third world poverty, absolute poverty, people that are struggling to put food on the table. And what we don't often think about, or maybe is more hidden, is poverty that is on our doorstep. Obviously, the situation we're going through at the moment is a big highlighter to people that are struggling, and the fact that more people will be struggling through this time. And essentially we're set up as an organisation to be a movement of Christians to support churches predominantly as the main movement of churches across Australia, to give them tools to practically serve people that are financially struggling. We all probably recognise that poverty is complex. It's often way more than just financial poverty. There is often social isolation, mental ill health, other issues that create a situation that someone is living in poverty. And so we give the church practical solutions to give holistic kind of care to people in their community in a way that shows people the gospel in action and gives the church something, kind of a bridge into their community to be doing something that's more than just their meeting on a Sunday, which, again, coming back to the current COVID-19 crisis, is an interesting question to be asking ourselves when what is the church if we're not meeting on a Sunday morning? And for us, it's an interesting time to be asking that question, and actually what can we do as churches to be the church for our community? And that's really what CAP is all about.
Yeah. So I guess, a lot of NGOs in, dealing with poverty and disadvantage in the community would basically, I guess, put a lot of effort into employing, social workers or welfare workers, setting up their own programs and providing those to the public. But you're saying you prefer to work through local churches who are already placed in, local communities or all over Australia. And of course, CAP started in the UK and is in other countries as well. So this is your model to sort of, I guess...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you probably hit the sweet spots in terms of, sometimes it feels like, well, maybe it would be easier if we set ourselves up as you first described and we employed case workers, social workers straight from here. But ultimately we believe that the church is the hope of the nation. We believe that the church has been ordained to be the one that gives hope to individuals, and so we see ourselves as a training and equipping organisation for the church to enable them them to be the ones that can be the hands and feet of the organisation to enable them to have a practical solution to people that find themselves in financial hardship.
Mm-hmm. Now, look, whether it's you know, as an organisation or whether it's a local church, I imagine that, you know, the option of saying, hey, you're poor, well, here's some money that will fix it. It sort of seems like the obvious solution, but my guess is that you probably don't have that money, and a lot of local churches wouldn't have that money for the people who are struggling with poverty or debt in their community. So is that what CAP does, just provide money, or is there more to it, or do you sort of take it from a different angle?
Yeah, so we don't give people kind of handouts or cash kind of first up. I suppose we take the model of wanting to help people help themselves. We want to empower people. I think that probably that we really work hard on is recognising that actually we're all in a situation where we can learn from others, that often we take a paternalistic view of service and help. So I'm the one with all the answers and I've got the resources, and I'm going to give someone who needs help a gift, a one-off kind of interaction, and that often makes me feel better, but it doesn't necessarily give the person that's been helped the dignity and the empowerment to say, do you know what, actually I can get out of this situation on my own, but I need help. And so our model is one that comes alongside people. So for our debt help work, for example, we train the church to go and be with people and help them over the long term. So we set clients up with a plan, and often our clients are working with us from anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So it's not a quick fix, but we're able to essentially coach them and work with them, recognising that we have things to learn from them and they have things to learn from us, and build a sense of community and friendship in a way that sees them find freedom and hopefully long-term transformation, not only for them but generationally. And some of the most exciting stories for me that come through our church networks are ones where they tell us stories where grandchildren are now in church having a completely different life to the one that they would have had if the church hadn't been in maybe their grandparents' home, sorting out a debt situation that has kind of radically changed that generational impact and poverty story for those children.
Yeah, intergenerational poverty. It's a pretty horrific thing. You know, when a kid, you know, grows up in a household never sort of seeing parents have heads above water, or even other relatives or grandparents, like you say, and possibly not even seeing parents in full-time work or anything. It's really hard to imagine, you know, yourself living a different lifestyle when you're surrounded by people who who are struggling in that way. But it's my understanding, Rosie, that there's something really powerful that CAP does, and that is, I guess you could call it advocacy, or like helping people to actually contact those organisations that they are, like the people are indebted to, say like a utility company, like electricity or water bill or a phone bill or whatever, and to actually advocate on behalf of those people and basically negotiate a repayment plan that's actually closer to, you know, people's ability to pay. Is that an important part of your debt work?
Yeah, it's a crucial part, I think. So while we talk about empowerment, there are people that have come to us for help. They've come to us for help because they're often completely overwhelmed by their situation. And what they need is someone to come alongside them and say, do you know what, I do know what we need to do. Let's put a plan together. And our clients that come to us for debt help, we put a plan together, and then, as you've described, we call their creditors and we have a conversation and we negotiate and advocate for them to get a repayment plan in place that they can afford. And we set that up, and often that changes. As I said before, clients are with us for 3 to 5 years, and so often circumstances change, and every time they change, we're there to renegotiate those arrangements, talking to creditors creditors can be really scary and overwhelming. And often the way that we describe the service that we're aiming for is to empower the client to feel like they're in control and to feel like they're able to step towards financial freedom, but to do that in a way that enables them to not be paralysed or overwhelmed by the stress of their situation. And so to do that, actually, we come alongside and help as much as we can do, especially in those early few months of setting up, to make sure that that overwhelmed feeling, which often has left them feeling depressed and isolated, enables them to maybe return to work, maybe start doing some normal activities, and that radically starts to change everything in their world rather than just the one thing that we might be looking at, which is debt.
Mm-hmm. So in the current COVID-19 crisis,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen these sort of queues of people going down the street wanting to get into Centrelink, wanting to access payment. People who are saying they've never needed to access any sort of government payment before, and now suddenly here they are. Is CAP able to do anything for people in this situation? I mean, surely I heard, I think it might have even been Scott Morrison, said that we're talking about millions of people whose jobs are affected by this.
Yeah, so I think the current statistic is 2 million people have lost their jobs in the last week, which is why we're obviously seeing the numbers at the Centrelink offices that we are. And while services are, theoretically accessible online, actually this is just unprecedented times. The system, Centrelink system, just isn't designed to cope with the volume of people that are now finding themselves in that situation. And so essentially, CAP is absolutely able to help in this moment. I think that there's a few conflicting things going on for us in that, as all other charities will be feeling right now, there's a kind of financial crunch on us and a logistical one in trying to have people at home. And so we feel like we're fighting for our survival, but at the same time, our client bookings are increasing. Our phone calls from our current clients, so the ones that are kind of on a debt management plan and been with us for 6 months, a year, 2 years, our calls from them has been significantly increased since COVID-19, just because they're losing their jobs.
And what about in terms of those churches who in various local communities are working with you, are helping the people in their neighbours, their friends? Are they sort of struggling to, with all this sort of social distancing and this sort of stuff? Are people in those churches struggling to continue the work they have been doing?
Yeah, so in terms of our debt help work, normally we offer a face-to-face service. We go and see people in their own homes. And so we've had to really quickly flex around that kind of model and have put together a solution where we're essentially doing our service as relationally as possible via kind of Skype or an internet kind of connection or phone connection. Often a lot of our clients don't have awesome access to internet solutions. And so we're trying to kind of flex around current government advice but continue to help people. So while people need help and the people needing that help is increasing, we're trying to continue to provide a service through the church and give them the, we're hopefully the ones that can work hard on putting a new procedure together and a new practice together, kind of right, well, how is this solution now need to look, and giving our church partners those new tools that are being developed almost on an hourly basis as we go through this to make sure that people that are finding themselves in an overwhelming debt situation. And to be honest, it's probably slightly too early to see a huge increase in people that are feeling overwhelmed by debt. We're probably a couple of weeks, maybe even a month away from that. If people have lost their jobs this week, those bills will start kind of catching up with us in a few months' time.
Yeah,
What we
well,
are seeing is a huge need for the Cap Money course. So that's another service or tool that we give to the church for them to help people that are needing to put a budget together, needing to work out what financial well-being looks like. How do I put a budget together, actually maybe financially resilient as I thought I was, both in the church and outside of the church? And how do I go through and navigate this season well with God while my financial situation is maybe more uncertain than it used to be? And so we're mobilising really, really quickly. We're actually doing our first kind of training for churches on Saturday as an online training medium, so that churches can get access and be trained to run the Cap Money course. Again, the solution for actually going through that course one-to-one will need to be remote or over the phone, and we've come up with solutions for how we think that people can do that, because the skills of financial well-being are crucial at this time. It's the one thing that if we can, as the church, become a place that offers hope and help to people at this stage, it could be a time for the church to really show people that the church is a place of community, even when we can't meet together. Now, that is a massive call and something that's going to be really, really difficult, but I believe that the church can do that. I believe that the church can rise up at this moment and really show Australia that this isn't about our meeting places. This is about building community that loves people and is willing to do whatever it takes to love people, whether in social isolation or social distancing or being far apart. We actually can be more connected than we'd ever been before.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful, Rosie. And I mean, your article, looking at debt and poverty and the church appears in the April magazine of Signs of the Times, and that's when people will be hearing this interview, even though, like, right now, as at the time of recording, as we're speaking, it's still in late March. So hopefully, some of those those trainings and those new initiatives that you're talking about will be up and running, by the time people hear
by
this.
April we'll be well on the way. And so if people are listening to this and they want to access those courses or our debt help work for people, then they can get in touch.
Yeah. And your number is 1300 227 000 for people in Australia. So if you're listening on Faith FM or you're in Australia listening on the podcast, that is the number, 1300 227 000, the emergency number. We'll certainly mention that again at the end of our chat, Rosie. But in the interest of empowerment, this is what you say you're about. You're helping people to learn how to manage their own finances, to, if at all possible, extricate themselves from their situation. What kind of practical tips do you have for people who are perhaps right now struggling with this whole sort of, COVID-19 situation, or perhaps even before that, they were struggling with debt? What are some practical things people can do, like, right now, even without having to call CAP in the first place? What are some things they can try by themselves, using their own resources that might actually make a positive difference?
Totally. And I'll kind of tell you everything that I think you can do, and then I'll finish by coming back to asking for help is probably the best thing that you can do if you really are feeling overwhelmed. So there are things that you can do yourself right now, and we'll go through those. But if actually you need help, then asking for help is a good thing to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's okay. Yeah.
So the first thing I think that we can do is actually talk about our budget or look at a budget. Do we have a budget? Do we know how much money we've got coming in and going out? Often when we have a buffer, often when we have more income than maybe we need, the need for a budget isn't there. And so this is the time for us to be having more conversations around our budget. If you have a wife or a husband, or you live in a household, I think the more we can have healthy conversations around where our money's going and agree on what we're spending money on, where we might pull back, where we might be able to save, this is the time to be able to do that.
So Rosie, when you use the word budget, I mean, I'm fairly financially sort of illiterate. You basically mean that you're actually writing down and keeping track of, like you say, how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and what you're spending on it. And I guess if you start recording it, those sorts of facts, instead of just sort of spending the money till it runs out and then you wait for payday, which is, what a lot of us do, let's face it, you're actually spending according to a plan. That's what a budget is that right? A plan of how you're going to spend your money? Yeah.
It is. It's a plan. And essentially, so through the Cap Money course is what we call a budget builder, as a kind of tool in which you put, this is the money I've got coming in, and then it asks you lots of simple questions. How much do you pay on your rent or your mortgage? How much do you currently pay on your food? How much do you give away to charities or to the church? What money do you spend on your bills? And kind of list all those things out. And often, most of us will be really surprised by if you do that process, where money is really. And in a time when people are tight, in a time like the situation that we're going through where finances are really uncertain, we can have conversations around our priorities. So we might be spending quite a lot of money on takeaway food, or we might be spending more money than we thought we were on something for our children. But when we're actually able to look at that, we're actually able to, rather than making impulse spends as we go, make informed decisions prior to being at the place or the point of spend, and make decisions. So I think the more conversations we can have around that and our priorities, the better. I'd recommend people seriously considering cutting up their credit cards. This can be a time where it can be really tempting to, do you know what, the world's kind of in chaos and I'm just going to spend and worry about it later, when the reality later will come sooner than we think. And so now is the time for us to put that budget together, work out what money we have and make sure we spend within our means. So the other kind of last little bit of advice really is just to make sure that when we're looking at our spending is to make sure that we kind of align our current spending with beliefs or our thoughts. And so currently in this crisis, I think that for those of us that are still working and still have money coming in, then we need to make sure that we're still spending and we're still being generous and we're still giving, so that those that are finding themselves in a really difficult situation at the moment are receiving the help and support from charities, churches, and just businesses that need our support. They need the income to keep everything moving and to keep their businesses open and their livelihoods and their people that they're employing going, and for us to kind of do what we can where we can to make sure that the economy keeps kind of rolling round, but making sure that that's within our means and within our own priorities and fits within our budget. And so the last thing is asking for help. So if you do all of that and you still feel overwhelmed, or as you said, do you know what, I don't know where to start with a budget, that's where I would reach out to your local church and say, have you heard of Cap Money? Can we get trained as a church to do this? Can we get the tools to put a budget together? Because I want to do this and I would love to help other people in church and outside of church to be able to ask this poignant question at this time where financial is going to be very, very high.
And I guess with this whole sort of COVID-19 crisis, we've sort of seen the best and the worst of humanity in some ways, haven't we? It's interesting what you say about don't forget to still be generous. And I've certainly really been touched by the older couple that we know who actually gave us an extra pack of toilet paper that they had because they heard we were getting low at that point. So nice. And I know at Signs of the Times, we still have people, even in this difficult time, still making donations, still saying, hey, I believe that this is the right time, for a magazine that talks about, keeping track of what is happening in the world around us and how this sort of links with what the Bible says about the end times. They say, well, yeah, this is really relevant. We're happy to donate at this time. Do you find that you're still having people supporting you guys at Christians Against Poverty, like in terms of, donors and things like that? They're seeing how important you are at this time? Because I think they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, remembering that we're talking quite early on in this crisis, it's probably really hard to know, to be honest. I'm talking to lots of other CEOs, and it's very difficult to know how this crisis is going to hit us. Previously, when things like this have happened, generally you would expect giving to decrease as kind of consumer confidence decreases. The biggest hurdle for us is that this point of the year we normally have quite a few fundraising events that have all had to be postponed to later on in the year. And so, support I think is going to be difficult, but at the same time, I believe in what you've just said, that I think that this is a moment that is important for people that can be generous to step up and to give generously. And I think that God will provide for us in the way that he always has. Could that be difficult? Absolutely. And we're probably going to have to work harder than we've ever worked before with our fundraising to make sure that the message gets out there that we need people to support us. But ultimately, I trust that God will provide for the places that he has called to provide the services for the church that he needs us to. And so we're going to carry on and believe that he will bring in the resources that we.
Yeah. So I guess the message is for people listening is, hey, right now it's not going to be hard to find someone or an organisation that is in need of help. It could be as close as the family next door or your own siblings and their families that you're in touch with over the phone or via Facebook or whatever. Please, if you're able, please, be generous, with individuals, with organisations that are making a positive difference as we go through this crisis, like Christians Against Poverty. Hey, thank you so much, Rosie, for your time. Things are pretty busy for you right now, so I really do appreciate that you've taken time out to chat to us on Signs of the Times Radio.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's Rosie Kendall from Christians Against Poverty. And again, if you would like to contact them, the number is 1300 227 000, or you can jump on their website, which is capaust.org. So that's CapAust, as in Cap Australia. I guess you could just Google it. Cap Australia, Christians Against Poverty. We'll see you next week.
Today's episode was based on an article appearing in this month's Signs of the Times magazine. A subscription is just $26 for 11 issues a year. To find out more, visit signsofthetimes.org.au. Signs of the Times has been published in Australia since 1886 and is proudly produced by Adventist Media.
This is an Adventist Media podcast.